Welcome to this episode of the Aquarist's Edge, a podcast for home aquarists just like you. Learn more about how to keep a thriving aquarium and discover ideas and tips to give your aquarium the edge. And now, over to our host, Arthur Preston.
Today we're going to look into one of the most intriguing mysteries of all of fish keeping. One that each of us as an aquarist has wondered about at least once. Usually during a quiet evening in front of the tank. You lean forward, eyes level with the glass. The soft shimmer of your aquarium light paints ripples across the rim. Your fish see you. One of them, perhaps a curious angelfish or a clever goldfish, swims closer. You can almost feel the connection. And then the question hits you. Does this fish know who I am? Do fish recognize their keepers? Do they remember us, distinguish us from strangers, even respond to our presence in meaningful ways? And if they do, then how do they tell us? And that's the mystery we're going to look at today in this first part of a two-part episode entitled The Secret Language of Fish. We're going to explore the science of how fish perceive their world through sight, vibration, and chemistry, and how that perception forms the foundation of communication. We'll look at their body language and the early stages of recognition between fish and human. So settle in, maybe settle down in front of your tank, grab a cup of coffee and listen to what is going to be said, because in every ripple and every flick of a fin in your tank, there's a message waiting for you. So let's start with the myth that refuses to die. The one that says that fish have a memory of only 3 seconds. Well, we've all heard it at some time. Somebody buys a goldfish, overfeeds it and shrugs their shoulders and says, doesn't matter, they forget everything anyway. But here's the truth, that myth is absolute rubbish, it's total nonsense. Scientific research over the past few decades has shown again and again that fish have memory spans measured not in seconds, but in months and in some cases even years. In 2016, researchers at Oxford University ran a fascinating experiment with archerfish. Those are those sharp-shooting hunters that spit jets of water to knock insects from branches. They trained archerfish to recognize human faces on a screen. Out of dozens of options, the fish correctly identified the right face over 80% of the time, even when the lighting and angles have changed. Now, that's not random chance. That's recognition of pattern. And it's not limited to archerfish. Studies on cichlids, goldfish, and even zebra danios show that they learn visual cues. They remember feeding times and they associate specific people with food and safety. So when your fish swims towards the front glass when you approach, that isn't coincidence, it's cognition. They're recognizing the outline of your body, the vibration of your footsteps, the timing of your routine. You have become part of their environment. It's a predictable, familiar presence, and once that recognition takes root, communication can begin to evolve. And so to really understand how fish recognize us and one another, we need to take a closer look at their sensory world. It's a world where sight and smell, touch and vibration all blend together, where information flows through water instead of air, where seeing doesn't mean what it means to us. And let's start with that. Let's begin with vision. Fish don't see quite like we do. In water, light bends, it diffuses, it changes color as it travels. But most fish have eyes finely tuned to these distortions. Some, like goldfish, can even see into the ultraviolet spectrum, perceiving shades and reflections invisible to us. So when your goldfish looks at you, it may be seeing subtle contrasts in your skin tone or clothing that make you stand out in a way that we can't even begin to imagine. And then there's the lateral line system, one of the most extraordinary sensory tools in the animal kingdom. It's a line of tiny pores running along each side of the fish's body, filled with nerve cells that detect changes in water pressure and vibration. When you walk towards the tank or gently move your hand near the water, your fish feel that. Not through hearing, but through sensation. They don't just see your presence, they sense it as ripples of pressure, motion and rhythm. That's how they know whether a visitor is safe or a threat. It's also, though, how they learn to recognize you. Finally, there's chemical communication, scent in a sense. Fish live in a constant bath of chemical information. They release and detect hormones, pheromones, and other compounds that carry messages. These signals tell other fish who's dominant, who's breeding, who's stressed, who's familiar. Cichlids, for instance, can identify their offspring through scent alone. In a tank full of juveniles, a mother cichlid knows which fry are hers. That's not instinct alone, it's chemical recognition. Now combine all those senses, vision, vibration, chemistry, and you get something quite extraordinary. A creature that may not speak or hear words, but perceives the world in exquisite detail. So when you lean close to the glass and your fish turns to face you, that's them reading you through a multi-sensory lens. To them, you're not just a shape, you're a combination of signals that they've learned to trust. And once you begin observing fish through that sensory framework, you start noticing patterns in their body language. Because fish speak through motion, through the position of their fins, the tilt of their bodies, the timing of their movements. Take angelfish, for example. When they're confident, their bodies are tall, their fins are fully extended, their movement is smooth and slow. When they're anxious or uncertain, they flatten, compress, and hover behind plants. You can see their mood shift. The betta fish is another perfect study of this. They flare their gill covers and fins in a display that looks dramatic, almost theatrical. Sometimes it's aggression, for sure. It's a territorial warning. But sometimes it's simply curiosity. If your betta gently flares towards you, then relaxes and resumes swimming, that's not hostility, that's recognition. It's saying to you, I see you, I know you. Schooling fish like tetras, rasboras, or barbs communicate collectively. Cohesive, coordinated school signals calm and confidence. If a group suddenly tightens or scatters, something spooked them. Maybe a shadow, a vibration, or an abrupt movement nearby. Their schooling rhythm is their language of safety. When you start to notice these patterns, you realize you're not just keeping fish. You're watching a society, a fluid, silent conversation that unfolds every moment. And here's where things start to get interesting. Once your fish starts recognizing you, your movement, your shadow, your footsteps, they don't just react to you, they begin to anticipate you. You'll see it most clearly at feeding time. You walk into the room and before you've even opened the food container, your fish are at the front glass, darting, turning, looking up. That's learned behavior, and it's intelligent. In 2014, behavioral ecologist Dr. Kate Newport showed that cichlids could not only learn from direct experience, but also by watching others. In her experiments, cichlids observed another fish performing a task, pushing a lever to access food, and later copied the action themselves. So fish don't just learn from cause and effect. They watch, they remember, and they imitate. So when your fish starts to follow your hand across the glass or mirror your movement, that's more than a trick of curiosity. It's communication. They're watching, learning, interpreting. And therein lies the heart of this mystery, because recognition becomes relationship. Fish know who you are. They remember. And that memory forms the foundation of their behavior around you. So let's now go on to something that still divides scientists, and that's emotion. Do fish feel emotion? And for many decades, researchers dismissed the idea out of hand. The logic was simple. Fish lack a neocortex, the brain region we associate with emotions in mammals. Therefore, they must be emotionless. But over the last 20 years, that view has changed quite dramatically. Dr. Cullen Brown, one of the leading voices in fish cognition research, has shown through dozens of studies that fish are not only capable of memory and learning, but also of behavioral flexibility, problem solving, stress responses, even what looks like play. Rainbow fish can learn complex mazes and remember them for weeks. Cichlids recognize social hierarchies. They know who's dominant, who's submissive, and when the balance changes. And goldfish? Well, they can distinguish between shapes, colors, and even musical tones when trained. Emotion in fish may not look like ours, but it's there in their behavior, in their reactions, in how they adapt to us. So when your fish greets you at the glass or when they hover calmly when you clean the tank, that's not instinct. That's recognition, trust, and familiarity. Might you say affection? Perhaps. Everything I've mentioned so far, recognition, perception, communication, leads to one simple truth. You can only understand your fish if you learn to watch them. Observation is the foundation of the aquarist craft. Noticing how your fish move when the tank is healthy and and how they move differently when something's wrong. Recognizing that a shy corridora hiding in the corner isn't being antisocial, it's telling you something about the environment. Observation turns keeping fish from maintenance into a relationship. If you spend 10 quiet minutes a day just watching, really watching, you'll start to hear the subtle conversation happening beneath the surface. You'll know when your fish are at ease, when they're stressed, when they're playful, and when they're communicating something deeper, and perhaps most beautifully, they'll start recognizing you as part of that conversation, because the truth is, you already are. The moment you added water, created balance, and brought life into the aquarium, you became part of the ecosystem. Every movement you make, every pattern you repeat, becomes part of your fish's reality. They see you, they remember you, and they speak back in ripples, rhythms, and at times silence. So in our next episode, we're going to explore what happens after recognition, how you can encourage your fish to communicate more clearly, how to interpret stress signals and trust cues, and how to build what I like to call a two-way relationship beyond the glass. Because once you understand how to listen, the next step is learning how to speak. And so until next time, when we gather to hear the next episode, enjoy some quiet time with your tank. Watch, notice, try not just to see fish, but patterns, gestures, rhythms, cues. They're talking already. You just have to learn how to hear them. And so until next time, keep learning, keep discovering, and keep enjoying this amazing hobby. Bye for now.
That's it for this episode of the Aquarius Sedge. Please consider subscribing to this podcast so that you don't miss further episodes. We would love it if you would also rate and review the podcast, as this helps make it visible to others. Until next time, keep learning and discovering, and keep finding your Aquarius Sedge in this captivating and fascinating hobby.